Welcome back to our podcast, Ancient Earth Documentary. The most feared predator in history wasn't just a killer. It was something far stranger, far more ruthless, and completely misunderstood until recently. Everything you think you know about what Tyrannosaurus rex ate is probably wrong. 66 million years ago, in what's now Montana and the Dakotas, something massive moved through forests of sequoia and fern. 6 tons of muscle and bone, teeth the size of bananas, a bite that could crush a car. For over a century, we've imagined T-Rex as the ultimate hunter, chasing down terrified prey in dramatic pursuits across prehistoric plains. But the real story, the one written in fossilized bones and preserved stomach contents, tells us something completely different. And in some ways, it's far more disturbing than any movie monster. Let's start with what scientists actually know, not what Hollywood imagined. Tyrannosaurus rex lived during the final chapter of the Age of Dinosaurs, the late Cretaceous period, approximately 68 to 66 million years ago. It wasn't around when Stegosaurus roamed. It never saw a Brachiosaurus. The T-Rex you picture in your mind lived in a specific time and place, dominating an ecosystem we're only beginning to understand. And in that ecosystem, it was the undisputed king. No other predator came close to its size, its power, or its appetite. But here's where things get interesting. For decades, paleontologists have argued about a seemingly simple question. Did T-Rex hunt, or did it scavenge? You'd think the answer would be obvious. Look at those teeth. Look at that jaw. Of course it hunted, except the evidence isn't that simple. And the real answer turns out to be far more complex than either camp imagined. The scavenger theory started gaining serious traction in the 1990s. Paleontologist Jack Horner became its most famous advocate, arguing that Tyrannosaurus was basically a 6-ton vulture. His reasoning seemed solid at first. T-Rex had comically short arms, seemingly useless in a fight. Its legs, while massive, weren't built for the kind of speed you'd need to chase down prey. And most tellingly, it had enormous olfactory bulbs, the part of the brain dedicated to smell. Why would a hunter need such a powerful nose? Scavengers, on the other hand, need to detect rotting meat from miles away. The debate became fierce. Scientists took sides. Papers were published. Careers were built on defending one position or attacking the other. And then, quietly, the fossil record started revealing something nobody expected. The answer wasn't either or. It was both, and something else entirely. A 6-ton Tyrannosaurus rex needed the same daily calories as 80 people eating 2,500 calories each. That translates to roughly 140 kilograms of meat every single day. Now pause and think about that for a moment. That's not a meal. That's a logistical nightmare. A T-Rex couldn't afford to be picky. It couldn't sit around waiting for something to conveniently die nearby. The mathematics of survival demanded that it actively hunt, and hunt successfully, just to maintain its body weight. Energetic studies have demolished the pure scavenger hypothesis. Recent research shows that multi-ton theropods would have gained almost nothing from scavenging after accounting for the energy spent searching for carcasses. In a competitive ecosystem filled with smaller, faster predators that could reach dead animals first, an adult T-Rex would have found insufficient carrion to sustain itself. The numbers simply don't work. As one study bluntly concluded, it's extremely unlikely that an adult T-Rex could use scavenging as a long-term sustainable foraging strategy. So, it hunted. But what did it hunt? Here's where fossil evidence becomes absolutely crucial. The Hell Creek Formation, where most T-Rex fossils come from, preserves an entire ecosystem. We're not just finding isolated bones, we're finding bite marks, tooth fragments, fossilized feces called coprolites, and in rare, precious cases, direct evidence of predator-prey interactions. The primary targets were hadrosaurs, particularly Edmontosaurus. These were duck-billed dinosaurs, massive herbivores that would dwarf modern elephants. A fully grown Edmontosaurus could reach 40 feet in length and weigh several tons. They travelled in herds, probably for protection, but that didn't always save them. Fossil evidence shows that T-Rex targeted these animals relentlessly. Multiple Edmontosaurus skeletons bear T-Rex bite marks, deep gouges where massive teeth punctured bone. But hadrosaurs weren't the only prey. Triceratops, the famous three-horned dinosaur, also fell victim to T-Rex predation. Now, hunting a Triceratops was a completely different challenge than hunting a hadrosaur. Triceratops had 3 horns, a massive bony frill protecting its neck, and could weigh up to 9 tons. It was basically a 5-ton tank with weapons. Yet T-Rex hunted them anyway. We found Triceratops skulls with bite marks that matched T-Rex teeth perfectly. Some show signs of infection, suggesting the Triceratops survived the initial attack before eventually dying from its wounds. Evidence from coprolites tells us even more. In 1998, scientists examined a T-Rex coprolite and found crushed bone fragments from an Ornithischian dinosaur, likely Edmontosaurus. Not just bone shards, crushed fragments. This revealed something extraordinary about T-Rex feeding behavior. It didn't just eat meat. It pulverized and digested bone itself, a behavior called osteophagy. Most predators avoid bones. They're hard to digest, they can damage teeth, and they provide relatively little nutrition compared to meat. But T-Rex was different. North American tyrannosaurids, especially Tyrannosaurus rex, habitually bit deeply into bones, crushing them into fragments and digesting them. This wasn't accidental. This was a specialized feeding adaptation that set T-Rex apart from almost every other large predator in history. Why would T-Rex do this? 2 reasons. First, bone marrow is incredibly nutritious, packed with fats and calories. By crushing bones, T-Rex could access nutrients that other predators simply couldn't reach. Second, in an environment where food was precious, wasting any part of a kill made no sense. If you could digest bone, you extracted more calories from every hunt. For an animal burning through 140 kilograms of meat daily, that efficiency mattered. The bite force required to pulverize bone is almost incomprehensible. Models predict that adult T-Rex generated sustained bite forces between 35,000 and 57,000 newtons at a single rear tooth. That's roughly 12,800 pounds of force. For comparison, a saltwater crocodile, one of the strongest biters alive today, maxes out around 16,000 newtons. T-Rex bit more than 3 times harder. No terrestrial animal that's ever lived comes close to matching that crushing power. Those banana-shaped teeth weren't just for show. Miriam Reichel at the University of Alberta discovered that tyrannosaur teeth had different functions depending on their position in the mouth. The front teeth were designed for gripping and pulling. Side teeth were built for puncturing. The teeth at the back were specialized for slicing pieces of prey and forcing those pieces toward the throat. Each tooth had a job, and together they formed a processing system that could handle almost anything T-Rex decided to eat. The teeth themselves were engineering marvels. Unlike the flat, blade-like teeth of other large theropods, T-Rex teeth were thick and robust, banana-shaped, as paleontologists describe them. This shape was crucial. Sharp, flat teeth work great for slicing, but they snap under extreme stress, especially when biting struggling prey. T-Rex teeth were built to withstand enormous forces without breaking. They could puncture, crush, and tear without shattering, even when biting into solid bone. And T-Rex didn't keep the same teeth forever. Like sharks, tyrannosaurs constantly replaced their teeth throughout their lives. Fossil evidence shows they had between 50 and 60 teeth in their mouths at any given time. But individual teeth were shed and regrown as they wore down or broke during feeding. For an animal that regularly bit through bone, this continuous replacement was essential. The feeding mechanics themselves were brutal and efficient. Emily Rayfield from the University of Bristol studied T-Rex jaw mechanics and confirmed what's called the puncture-pull feeding strategy. The tyrannosaur would ambush or pursue its prey, then deliver a devastating initial bite. Those massive teeth would puncture deep into flesh and bone, finding purchase. Then came the pull. T-Rex would drag its teeth backward through the prey's body, tearing away massive chunks of tissue. This wasn't the precise surgical striking of a big cat. This was industrial-scale butchery. T-Rex didn't chew its food. It couldn't, not in the way mammals do. Instead, it used a feeding method called inertial feeding, the same technique modern crocodiles use. After tearing away a chunk of meat and bone, T-Rex would throw its head back, using gravity and momentum to position the food toward the back of its throat. A 2007 study estimated that T-Rex neck muscles were powerful enough to toss a 110-pound chunk of flesh 15 feet into the air and catch it again. Imagine that for a moment. A piece of meat the size of a large dog, airborne then swallowed whole. This brings us to perhaps the most shocking discovery about T-Rex diet. It ate other T-Rex. The evidence for tyrannosaur cannibalism is now undeniable. Multiple T-Rex fossils have been found bearing bite marks that could only have been made by other T-Rex. Rex individuals. These aren't ambiguous scratches. These are deep gouges, the kind that match T-Rex tooth spacing and bite force exactly. Matthew McLean, who led one study on this, pointed out that T-Rex was the only carnivore in its ecosystem large enough and powerful enough to create such damage. Modern large carnivores practice cannibalism regularly. Lions kill and sometimes eat other lions. Bears do the same. For T-Rex, cannibalism served dual purposes. It eliminated competition, and it provided a convenient meal. As one researcher noted, it's an efficient way to take out the competition and get food at the same time. But this wasn't just opportunistic scavenging of dead tyrannosaurs. Evidence suggests T-Rex sometimes actively killed other members of its species. Bite marks have been found on T-Rex skulls, indicating violent confrontations between living individuals. David Burnham from the University of Kansas described this as ultra-cannibalism. When apex predators become overpopulated, they start killing and eating each other. As T-Rex dominated its ecosystem more completely, it may have reached the limits of available prey. Cannibalism became a population control mechanism, a brutal but effective way to maintain balance when the top predator had eliminated most other threats. But here's where the story takes another turn. Not all T-Rex ate the same things. Recent discoveries have revealed that juvenile and adult tyrannosaurs had completely different diets, hunting completely different prey. This phenomenon is called ontogenetic niche partitioning, and it may be one of the key reasons T-Rex dominated its ecosystem so thoroughly. Juvenile T-Rex looked nothing like the bone-crushing adults. They were leaner, faster, with proportionally longer arms and legs built for speed. Their skulls were narrower, their bite force dramatically weaker. A 10-year-old tyrannosaur had only about 13% of an adult's maximum bite force. These weren't miniature versions of adult hunters. They were functionally different animals, and they hunted accordingly. The smoking gun came in 2023. Scientists analysed the fossilized stomach contents of a juvenile Gorgosaurus, a close cousin of T-Rex. Inside, they found the hind limbs of two small dinosaurs, both under a year old. This was the first direct evidence of what young tyrannosaurs actually ate. They weren't taking down Edmontosaurus or Triceratops. They were hunting babies. David Burnham wasn't exaggerating when he said the number one thing in those stomach contents was juvenile dinosaurs. This discovery fundamentally changed how we understand tyrannosaur ecology. Young tyrannosaurs weren't just smaller versions of their parents waiting to grow up. They occupied an entirely different ecological niche, filling a predatory role that in other ecosystems would be occupied by completely different species. Think about modern Africa. You have cheetahs hunting gazelles, lions taking down wildebeest, and leopards going after mid-sized prey. 3 different predators, 3 different hunting styles, 3 different prey bases. In the late Cretaceous Hell Creek Formation, you had small raptors like Paranicodon hunting the tiniest prey, then essentially nothing in the middle tier, and then T-Rex dominating everything else. That's bizarre. Most ecosystems don't work that way, except T-Rex didn't need other mid-sized predators. Its juveniles filled that role perfectly. A 10-year-old tyrannosaur was built like a pursuit predator. Longer legs relative to body size, lighter skull, narrower jaws optimized for slashing rather than crushing. These weren't the bone-pulverizing monsters their parents were. These were fast, agile hunters chasing down prey that could run. The bite force studies confirm this. Where an adult could generate 57,000 newtons of force, enough to shatter a car windshield, a juvenile could barely manage 13% of that. Comparable to an alligator or a lion, still dangerous, absolutely, but operating in a completely different weight class. François Therrien from the Royal Tyrrell Museum described it perfectly. Juvenile tyrannosaurs were chasing small and swift prey, while adults hunted massive herbivores that lived in herds. This wasn't just different hunting. This was different biology expressing itself in different behavior. The fossil record backs this up in unexpected ways. When paleontologists examined predator-prey ratios in Hell Creek, they found something strange. T-Rex was as common as Edmontosaurus, one of its primary prey species. That should be impossible. Predators are always rarer than their prey. Always. The energy pyramid doesn't allow for equal numbers, unless the predators aren't all competing for the same food source. Juvenile tyrannosaurs solved that problem. By targeting completely different prey than the adults, they effectively doubled the carrying capacity of the ecosystem for their species. A family group of tyrannosaurs could include adults hunting triceratops and teenagers picking off baby hadrosaurs without ever competing with each other for food. That's not just efficient. That's evolutionary genius. But this raises an uncomfortable question. If juvenile tyrannosaurs specialized in hunting baby dinosaurs, what happened when they encountered baby tyrannosaurs? We already know adult T-Rex practiced cannibalism. The bite marks prove it. But the juveniles, the evidence suggests they were just as willing to eat each other. This is where the ultra-cannibalism David Burnham mentioned becomes truly disturbing. When tyrannosaurs became overpopulated, they didn't just compete, they consumed. Young tyrannosaurs hunting other young tyrannosaurs. Adults killing juveniles. The species regulating its own numbers through predation. Modern Komodo dragons do something similar. Juvenile dragons spend their first years in trees, away from adults, because adult Komodos will absolutely eat them if given the chance. Young tyrannosaurs probably face the same threat. Stay away from the adults. Hunt in different areas. Avoid confrontation. Because in the tyrannosaur world, everything was potential food, even family. This brings us to one of the most contentious debates in tyrannosaur paleontology. Did they hunt in packs? The fossil evidence is maddeningly ambiguous. In British Columbia, paleontologists found the first known tyrannosaur trackway showing 3 individuals traveling together. Not hunting, not feeding, just walking in the same direction at the same time. That's not proof of pack behavior, but it's suggestive. Modern crocodiles are largely solitary, but they'll tolerate each other at feeding sites. Maybe tyrannosaurs did the same. Then there's the bone beds. Multiple tyrannosaur skeletons found in close proximity, all dying around the same time. Some researchers argue this indicates social groups. Others point out that drought or disease could easily kill multiple solitary animals in the same location without requiring any social behavior whatsoever. The cannibalism evidence actually argues against pack hunting. Animals that routinely eat each other don't typically cooperate in coordinated hunts. Wolves don't eat other wolves. Lions occasionally kill competitors, but they don't hunt their own pride members. The presence of bite marks on Tyrannosaurus skulls, evidence of violent confrontations between individuals, suggests Tyrannosaurs were more likely to fight than cooperate. But here's where it gets complicated. Maybe juvenile tyrannosaurs hunted cooperatively while adults remained solitary. That would explain the trackway evidence while still accounting for the aggressive adult behavior. Young tyrannosaurs, smaller and weaker, might have benefited from group hunting when taking down prey larger than themselves. Then, as they matured and their bite force increased, they could transition to solitary hunting and aggressive territorial behavior. We don't know. The fossil record preserves bones, not behavior. What we can say with certainty is that tyrannosaurs were incredibly successful predators, regardless of whether they hunted alone or in groups. Their success came down to raw physical capability. The bite force, the teeth, the sensory systems designed for locating and killing prey. Let's talk about those senses. T-Rex didn't just stumble onto its meals. It had some of the most sophisticated sensory equipment in the dinosaur world. Start with vision. Tyrannosaur eye sockets are positioned differently than most theropods. Instead of facing sideways for a wide field of view, they face forward. This gives binocular vision, the ability to judge depth and distance with remarkable precision. Better than hawks, according to some studies. Jack Horner, the paleontologist who championed the scavenger hypothesis, actually pointed out that tyrannosaurs show a long-term evolutionary trend toward better and better binocular vision. That's weird if you're a scavenger. Dead things don't run away. You don't need exceptional depth perception to find a carcass. But if you're chasing living prey through a forest, trying to judge the exact distance to a fleeing hadrosaur's hindquarters so you can land a disabling bite, suddenly that binocular vision makes perfect sense. Then there's smell. Tyrannosaurs had enormous olfactory bulbs, the parts of the brain dedicated to processing scent information. For years, this was used as evidence for scavenging. After all, vultures have excellent senses of smell for locating dead animals from miles away. But here's the problem with that argument. Recent research shows that modern birds, the descendants of theropod dinosaurs, actually have poorly developed olfactory systems, which means the enlarged olfactory bulbs in T-Rex weren't inherited from bird ancestors. They evolved specifically in the tyrannosaur lineage. Why would a scavenger need to evolve better smell when its ancestors already had adequate scavenging capabilities? The answer is it wouldn't. But a predator-tracking mobile, dispersed prey absolutely would benefit from enhanced olfactory navigation. T-Rex could smell a living Edmontosaurus from miles away, track it through dense vegetation, and locate it even when visual contact was impossible. That's not scavenging adaptation, that's pursuit predation. Combine the vision and smell with what we know about T-Rex hunting strategy, and you get a picture of a remarkably sophisticated predator, not a mindless eating machine, but a calculated killer that used multiple senses to locate, track, and ultimately take down its prey. The actual mechanics of a T-Rex hunt would have been terrifying. Based on biomechanical studies, we can reconstruct the likely sequence of events when a T-Rex targeted something like an Edmontosaurus. First, detection. The tyrannosaur spots or smells potential prey from a considerable distance. Maybe a herd of hadrosaurs grazing near a riverbank. T-Rex approaches, using whatever cover the landscape provides. Contrary to popular belief, T-Rex probably wasn't a sprint predator. Its maximum speed was likely around 12 to 18 miles per hour. Fast for something that weighs 6 tons, but not fast enough to run down a fleeing hadrosaur in a straight sprint. But here's the thing. Edmontosaurus was faster over short distances, but T-Rex had better endurance. This matters more than you'd think, A hadrosaur could burst away at high speed, but it couldn't maintain that pace. T-Rex didn't need to catch its prey immediately. It just needed to keep it in sight and keep moving. Eventually, the hadrosaur would tire. The Tyrannosaur wouldn't. Once T-Rex closed the distance, it targeted specific body parts. Gregory Paul's research showed that tyrannosaurs went for the hindquarters first, specifically the chorda femoralis and thigh muscles that power locomotion. Disable those, and your prey isn't going anywhere. The alternative was going for the neck, severing the trachea and major blood vessels for a faster kill. The bite itself would be devastating. That puncture pull strategy Emily Rayfield documented. T-Rex bites down with enough force to crack bones, then pulls back, dragging its serrated teeth through flesh and bone like a saw blade. The prey is simultaneously crushed and shredded. If the initial bite doesn't kill immediately, the Tyrannosaur maintains pursuit, landing additional bites until the prey collapses from blood loss, shock, or catastrophic injury. Then comes feeding. This is where the real brutality becomes apparent. T-Rex didn't delicately carve its meals. It tore into carcasses with abandon, pulverizing bones to access marrow, swallowing massive chunks of flesh whole. The 2010 study of Tarbosaurus feeding traces showed surprising precision, carefully stripping muscle from bone. But that precision served efficiency, not elegance. Every scrap of nutritional value was extracted. We know this from the coprolites, fossilized feces that preserve what actually made it through the digestive system. When scientists analyzed T-Rex coprolites, they found crushed bone fragments from ornithischian dinosaurs. Not just swallowed whole, but pulverized. T-Rex was digesting the bones themselves, extracting calcium and nutrients that other predators couldn't access. This is osteophagy, bone eating, and it's rare among large predators. Hyenas do it. Some bears do it. But among dinosaurs, tyrannosaurs stood alone in their commitment to bone crushing as a regular feeding behavior. The evolutionary path toward this extreme osteophagy required specific adaptations. Prodigious bite forces, obviously, but also tooth shape and jaw configuration that concentrated shear stress in precise ways. The teeth needed to be strong enough not to shatter under the strain. The skull needed to withstand forces that would crack the bones of other theropods. And the digestive system needed to handle the calcium load from all that pulverized bone. T-Rex evolved all of it. The result was a predator that could extract more nutrition from each kill than any competitor, gaining access to food resources others simply couldn't process. This raises a final question about T-Rex diet that we haven't fully addressed. What about the scavenging debate? For decades, paleontologist Jack Horner argued that T-Rex was primarily or exclusively a scavenger. His arguments seemed compelling. Short arms, useless for grappling prey, excellent sense of smell, perfect for finding carcasses, relatively slow speed, inadequate for chasing down fast prey, large size, making active hunting energetically expensive. But every single one of those arguments has been systematically dismantled by subsequent research. The short arms? Irrelevant. T-Rex killed with its mouth, not its hands. The excellent smell? Adaptations for tracking living prey, not locating carrion. The speed? Sufficient for endurance hunting. The size? Actually made scavenging less viable, not more. Here's why. A 6-ton T-Rex needed roughly 140 kilograms of meat per day. That's the caloric equivalent of 80 humans eating normal diets. Where's that meat coming from if you're scavenging? In the Hell Creek ecosystem, you'd be competing with smaller, faster scavengers that could reach carcasses long before a massive tyrannosaur arrived. The energetic calculations simply don't work. An adult T-Rex couldn't sustain itself on scavenging alone. The energy expended searching for carrion would exceed the energy gained from finding it. But the real evidence, the undeniable proof that T-Rex hunted, comes from healed bite wounds. Multiple Edmontosaurus fossils bear healed bite wounds along their backs, actual bone tissue that closed over injuries, forming scar tissue around the damage. One specimen had something even more remarkable. The tip of a tyrannosaur tooth embedded in the vertebra, completely surrounded by new bone growth. Think about what that means. A T-Rex attacked a living Edmontosaurus, bit down hard enough to break off a tooth inside the prey's body, and the Edmontosaurus escaped, survived, lived long enough for its body to recognize the embedded tooth as a foreign object and build new bone around it, sealing it inside like a prehistoric time capsule. That's not scavenging. You can't heal from being scavenged. You're already dead. This single piece of evidence demolishes the pure scavenger hypothesis more effectively than any theoretical argument ever could. The tooth embedded in the Hell Creek Formation hadrosaurid specimen represents what scientists call definitive evidence. Not suggestive, not probable, definitive. Here's what makes it even more compelling. The location of the attack matches modern pursuit predator behavior. The tooth was found in the mid-caudal area, the middle section of the tail. When Kalahari lions hunt, they target the hindquarters first, attempting to immobilize prey by damaging the rear legs and tail base. The same strategy, separated by 66 million years. But that's just one specimen. What about all the other bite marks on dinosaur bones? The fossil record is actually filled with tyrannosaur bite marks on prey species, Triceratops specimens showing characteristic T-Rex tooth spacing, Edmontosaurus bones with puncture wounds matching tyrannosaur dentition, even other T-Rex individuals bearing bite marks from their own kind. Most of these marks are unhealed, fresh damage that happened at or near the time of death. For decades, skeptics argued these could represent scavenging. Maybe T-Rex just found dead animals and fed on them. The unhealed wounds don't prove the prey was alive when bitten. Technically true. But here's the statistical reality. Prey rarely escapes in nature. Most hunts that reach the biting stage end with the prey dying. The predator wins. That's why healed bite wounds are so rare in the fossil record. They represent the exceptional cases where prey survived. So when we find dozens of unhealed bite marks, the most parsimonious explanation isn't that T-Rex stumbled across dozens of conveniently dead animals. It's that T-Rex killed them. The healed wounds prove hunting capability. The unhealed wounds represent successful hunts. Modern paleontology now accepts this conclusion almost universally. T-Rex was an active predator, not exclusively. It would have scavenged when opportunities arose, just like every large carnivore does. Lions scavenge, tigers scavenge, bears scavenge. But their primary feeding strategy involves hunting, and the same was true for T-Rex. The opportunistic carnivore model fits all the evidence. Hunt when possible. Scavenge when convenient. Maximize caloric intake while minimizing energy expenditure. It's the strategy that every successful apex predator employs. But there's another dietary revelation that emerged from recent research, something that genuinely surprised paleontologists when the evidence first appeared. T-Rex ate other T-Rex. Cannibalism. Not occasionally, habitually. Multiple T-Rex fossils have been discovered with bite marks that could only have been made by other T-Rex. The spacing of the teeth, the depth of the punctures, the sheer force required to create the damage. Only one predator in the Hell Creek ecosystem possessed the necessary attributes. Another tyrannosaur. These aren't ambiguous scratches. They're deep gouges in arm bones, bite marks on skulls, tooth scores on ribs. Study leader Matthew McLean examined the evidence and reached an unavoidable conclusion. T-Rex was eating its own species. Some of this surely represents scavenging. A dead T-Rex represented several tons of meat. No reason to let that go to waste. But evidence suggests the cannibalism extended beyond opportunistic scavenging of corpses. Bite marks on skulls indicate face-to-face confrontations. aggressive interactions between living individuals that sometimes escalated to fatal violence. Modern big carnivores do this constantly. Male lions kill cubs from rival males. Brown bears kill and eat smaller bears. Crocodiles are notoriously cannibalistic. It serves dual purposes: eliminate competition and obtain calories simultaneously. Why would T-Rex behave differently? Paleontologist David Burnham calls it ultra-cannibalism. When predator populations reach certain densities, they begin regulating themselves through intraspecific predation, killing each other, eating each other. It's brutal. It's effective. And for T-Rex, it appears to have been routine. This behavior reveals something important about tyrannosaur ecology. These animals weren't just successful predators. They were so dominant in their ecosystems that their primary competition came from each other. No other predator posed a serious threat. The biggest danger to a T-Rex was another T-Rex, which brings us to another dimension of tyrannosaur feeding ecology that fundamentally reshapes our understanding of how these animals lived. Diet changed dramatically across the lifespan. A juvenile T-Rex didn't eat the same prey as an adult, not even close. This is called ontogenetic niche partitioning, and it's one of the most fascinating discoveries in recent tyrannosaur research. Basically, young tyrannosaurs and adult tyrannosaurs occupied different ecological roles. Different hunters, different prey, different strategies. Juvenile T-Rex possessed anatomical features completely unlike the bone-crushing adults. Their skulls were narrower, more gracile. Their teeth were blade-like rather than railroad spike robust. Their legs were proportionally longer. Their bite force was a fraction of adult strength. A 10-year-old Gorgosaurus, a close tyrannosaur relative, generated only 13% of maximum adult bite force. These weren't baby versions of adult hunters. They were fundamentally different predators. Recent fossil evidence confirmed this in spectacular fashion. In 2023, scientists published analysis of preserved stomach contents from a juvenile Gorgosaurus. Actual fossilized gut contents showing what the animal had eaten before it died. Inside the ribcage, hind limbs from two small dinosaurs, both under a year old. Juvenile prey. Small, fast, vulnerable targets. Exactly what you'd expect a gracile, long-legged juvenile tyrannosaur to hunt. Paleontologist François Terrien summarized the findings perfectly. Juvenile tyrannosaurs were mainly chasing down small and swift prey, while adults were hunting large herbivorous dinosaurs that lived in herds. Different ecological niches, different food sources, no direct competition between age classes. This has enormous implications for understanding tyrannosaur dominance. Most ecosystems contain a range of predator sizes. Small predators for small prey, medium predators for medium prey, large predators for large prey, but in tyrannosaur ecosystems, you see something unusual. Small carnivorous raptors like Paranicodon, then nothing, then T-Rex. The gap where medium-sized predators should exist was filled by juvenile tyrannosaurs. They occupied that ecological space, hunting prey that adults ignored. As they grew, they gradually shifted toward larger prey, eventually becoming the bone-crushing giants we recognize. One species covering multiple predatory niches across its growth stages. It's an evolutionary strategy that allowed tyrannosaurs to dominate more completely than any other predatory lineage. They weren't just apex predators. They were the entire predator guild, from small to large, all within a single species at different life stages. The hunting strategies themselves varied with age. Adults likely relied on power and endurance. Biomechanical studies suggest Edmontosaurus was faster than T-Rex over short distances, but tyrannosaurs had superior stamina. Chase the prey until it tires, then close in. This matches modern pursuit predator behavior. Wolves employ similar tactics. African wild dogs do the same. Speed matters less than endurance when you're built for the long chase. And T-Rex, despite its size, appears to have been well equipped for sustained pursuit. Evidence suggests tyrannosaurs targeted specific body parts during attacks. The chorda femoralis muscle and thigh muscles to disable locomotion, the abdomen to eviscerate, the neck to sever the trachea and major blood vessels. Targeted strikes designed for maximum damage and rapid kills, not random biting, strategic predation. The sensory capabilities supporting these hunts were remarkable. T-Rex possessed binocular vision superior to most other theropods. The eye sockets positioned forward, providing depth perception slightly better than modern hawks. Why would natural selection favor steadily improving binocular vision across tyrannosaur evolution if they were scavengers? Scavengers don't need precision depth perception. Hunters do. The olfactory capabilities were equally impressive. Significant portions of the tyrannosaur brain dedicated to processing scents. For years, this was cited as evidence for scavenging, excellent smell for finding carcasses. But recent studies flipped that interpretation. The olfactory adaptations weren't for locating stationary carrion. They were for tracking mobile, dispersed prey, following scent trails, detecting prey from distance. The same adaptations wolves and big cats use for hunting. Even the feeding behavior after a kill demonstrates sophistication. A 2010 study examined feeding traces left by Tarbosaurus, a close T-Rex relative. The predator didn't just smash through the carcass, destroying everything. It carefully stripped muscle from bone, methodically processing the kill to extract maximum nutrition. Precision and power combined. The ability to pulverize bone when necessary, but also the control to efficiently harvest meat without wasting edible tissue. The ecosystem context makes the hunting necessity even clearer. The Hell Creek Formation, where most T-Rex fossils are found, contained abundant large herbivores. Edmontosaurus, the duck-billed hadrosaur. Triceratops, the three-horned ceratopsian. Ankylosaurs with their armored bodies. Even sauropods like Alamosaurus in some regions. These massive plant eaters formed the prey base. They were everywhere. Edmontosaurus was as common in the formation as T-Rex itself. Herds of multi-ton herbivores representing mobile food sources. A scavenger couldn't sustain itself in this environment. Too much competition for carcasses from smaller, faster opportunists. Insufficient carrion availability to feed a 6-ton predator requiring 140 kilograms of meat daily. The math simply doesn't work. But an active hunter, surrounded by herds of prey animals, that's sustainable. That's an ecosystem that makes sense. One final aspect of tyrannosaur feeding deserves attention. The question of social hunting. Did T-Rex hunt in groups? The evidence remains ambiguous. Trackways from British Columbia show 3 tyrannosaurs travelling together. Suggestive of group behaviour, possibly cooperative hunting. If tyrannosaurs hunted in packs, it would have dramatically increased their effectiveness, allowing them to tackle prey even larger than solitary individuals could manage. But other evidence points towards solitary or at least antagonistic interactions. The cannibalism. The bite marks on skulls suggesting face-to-face combat. The general pattern in large theropods favouring solitary hunting. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. Opportunistic association. Sometimes hunting alone. Sometimes tolerating other individuals nearby. Occasionally cooperating when circumstances favoured it. Flexibility rather than rigid social structure. What emerges from all this evidence is a complete picture of T-Rex as an eating machine. Not a mindless killing automaton, but a sophisticated predator employing multiple strategies across its lifetime to secure the massive caloric intake its body demanded. Young tyrannosaurs chasing down swift juvenile prey with their gracile builds and relatively long legs. Adults pursuing hadrosaur herds with endurance and power. opportunistic scavenging when carcasses presented themselves, cannibalism when competition or opportunity aligned, targeted attacks on specific body parts, bone crushing to access marrow, careful carcass processing to maximize nutrition. Every adaptation, every behavior, every anatomical feature pointed toward one goal: eat enough to survive. For an animal requiring the caloric equivalent of 80 humans daily, that meant constant hunting, and survival meant eating constantly. But here's something that might surprise you. The way T-Rex killed its prey wasn't random violence. It was surgical precision wrapped in overwhelming force. Let's talk about the bite itself, the actual mechanics of how T-Rex delivered death. Because this is where things get genuinely fascinating. When a tyrannosaur attacked, it didn't just clamp down and hold on like a modern crocodile. It employed what scientists call the puncture pull strategy, a technique documented through biomechanical analysis and fossil evidence that proved devastatingly effective. The attack began with a powerful initial bite. Those massive jaws, capable of generating 57,000 newtons of force, drove teeth deep into the prey's body. But then came the crucial second phase. T-Rex would drag its teeth backward through flesh and bone, using its powerful neck muscles to tear massive chunks free. Not a clean slice. A violent ripping motion that maximized damage and efficiently separated meat from the skeleton. Emily Rayfield from the University of Bristol conducted detailed studies on this feeding strategy. Her research showed that the tyrannosaur skull was specifically adapted to withstand both the compression forces of biting down and the shearing forces of pulling back. Equal strength in both directions. A structural design that let T-Rex bite and tear without risking damage to its own skull. Think about what that means in practice. A hadrosaur running for its life suddenly feels those jaws close around its hindquarters. Bone-crushing pressure. Then the teeth drag backward, tearing through muscle, severing tendons, ripping away flesh in chunks weighing dozens of pounds. The prey animal collapses, its locomotor system destroyed in seconds. The teeth themselves tell part of this story. T-Rex possessed 50 to 60 teeth at any given time, arranged in a dental arcade that wasn't uniform. Different teeth for different jobs. Miriam Reichel from the University of Alberta studied this dental specialization in detail. The front teeth, smaller and more tightly packed, were designed for gripping and stripping. Precision tools for delicate work. The side teeth, larger and more robust, were built for puncturing deep into prey, driving through thick hide and muscle to reach vital organs. The back teeth, massive and serrated, specialized in slicing large pieces of flesh and forcing them toward the throat. This wasn't a mouthful of identical weapons. It was a toolkit, each tooth positioned and shaped for specific functions during feeding, and those teeth were replaced constantly throughout the tyrannosaur's life. Wear a tooth down, biting through bone? No problem. Another grows in to take its place. A conveyor belt system, ensuring T-Rex always had functional cutting and crushing equipment. Some individual tyrannosaur teeth show extreme wear patterns, ground down almost to the root. Evidence of the incredible forces these teeth endured during normal feeding activities. The banana-shaped design of T-Rex teeth deserves special attention. Why curved instead of straight and blade-like? Reichel proposed that the shape was specifically adapted to handle struggling prey. A thin, flat, knife-like tooth would snap under lateral stress when a multi-ton animal thrashed in the tyrannosaur's jaws. But a thick, curved tooth? That could flex slightly, absorb the strain, and survive the violent struggle without breaking. Form-following function in the most literal way. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. T-Rex didn't chew. Not in any way a mammal would recognize. Those powerful jaws and specialized teeth weren't used to grind food into smaller pieces before swallowing. Instead, T-Rex practiced what's called inertial feeding. behavior we observe in modern crocodiles and birds. The tyrannosaur would bite off a massive chunk of meat and bone, often weighing over 100 pounds. Then, using its incredibly powerful neck muscles, it would throw its head back sharply, flipping the meat toward the back of its throat. Gravity and momentum doing the work of positioning food for swallowing. A 2007 study estimated that T-Rex neck muscles were strong enough to toss a 110-pound bolus of flesh 15 feet into the air and catch it. That's not eating. That's juggling with your dinner. The entire piece would then be swallowed whole. Flesh, bone, everything. This is where that extreme bite force becomes crucial again. By crushing bones before swallowing, T-Rex could reduce the size of what needed to fit down its throat, while simultaneously accessing the nutritious marrow inside. Bone fragments in Tyrannosaur coprolites prove this wasn't occasional behavior. It was standard practice. Every meal involved consuming and digesting significant amounts of bone material. But let's step back and consider what this looked like in the field. A living, breathing feeding event. Because the fossil evidence gives us enough information to reconstruct the scene with surprising accuracy. An adult T-Rex spots an Edmontosaurus herd. These duck-billed hadrosaurs, each weighing several tons, represent exactly the kind of prey an adult tyrannosaur targeted. The predator doesn't charge immediately. That would waste energy and alert the entire herd too early. Instead, it approaches carefully, using whatever cover the landscape provides. Tyrannosaurs weren't ambush predators in the sense of lying in wait for hours, but they understood the value of getting close before launching an attack. The chosen target, perhaps an individual slightly separated from the main herd or one showing signs of injury or age, becomes the focus. T-Rex accelerates. Not sprinting at top speed, that wasn't necessary or even possible for an animal this size, but moving fast enough to close distance before the prey can build up to full running speed. The hadrosaur runs. And here's where endurance mattered more than raw velocity. Biomechanical studies show that Edmontosaurus was actually faster than Tyrannosaurus over short distances, but that speed came at a cost. The hadrosaur burned energy quickly, tiring after a relatively brief sprint. T-Rex, meanwhile, was built for sustained pursuit. Longer strides, more efficient locomotion, the ability to maintain a chase for minutes rather than seconds. Eventually, the hadrosaur slows. Exhaustion setting in. That's when the Tyrannosaur closes for the kill. The attack targets specific body parts chosen for maximum effect. Gregory Paul documented that Tyrannosaurids preferentially attacked the cauda femoralis muscle and thigh muscles. These are the major muscles powering the hadrosaur's hind legs. Destroy them and the prey can't run, can't escape. The hunt is essentially over. Alternatively, a bite to the abdomen could eviscerate the prey, causing massive trauma and rapid death. Or a strike to the neck, severing the trachea and major blood vessels, bringing death in seconds. These weren't random targets. They were deliberate choices based on anatomy and effectiveness. The initial bite lands. 57,000 newtons of force driving teeth through hide, muscle, and bone. The prey screams, thrashes, tries desperately to escape. But those teeth are already dragging backward, the puncture pull strategy in full effect. Muscle tears, tendons snap, bone cracks. A chunk of flesh the size of a small child rips free. The hadrosaur collapses, its leg muscles destroyed, blood loss already critical. T-Rex doesn't wait for death. It begins feeding immediately, head thrown back, tossing meat down its throat, biting again, crushing bone, accessing marrow. The feeding is loud, violent, efficient, nothing wasted. Even bones too large to swallow whole are crushed into manageable pieces. The entire carcass, potentially several tons of meat and bone, represents multiple days of food. But the initial feeding frenzy secures the most nutritious parts before scavengers arrive. And scavengers would arrive. Smaller theropods. Opportunistic pterosaurs. anything capable of stealing scraps from a kill. This is why T-Rex likely consumed as much as possible immediately, despite having made a kill large enough to feed it for days. In a competitive ecosystem, you eat what you can while you can. The feeding traces left on fossil bones support this reconstruction. Tooth marks show the characteristic puncture pull pattern. Deep grooves where teeth dragged through bone. Crushed bone fragments where the tyrannosaur pulverized skeletal elements. Systematic stripping of muscle from specific areas. The fossil record preserves not just evidence of feeding, but evidence of technique. David Hone and Mahito Watabe's 2010 study of Tarbosaurus feeding traces revealed something unexpected. The close T-Rex relative hadn't just demolished its hadrosaur prey in a chaotic frenzy. Instead, the feeding showed careful, methodical processing. Muscle stripped from bones with precision. Efficient harvesting of edible tissue. This suggested cognitive sophistication, the ability to plan and execute a feeding strategy that maximized nutritional gain while minimizing wasted effort. Which brings us to another crucial question. How much could T-Rex actually eat in a single feeding session? Modern large predators provide useful comparisons. A lion can consume up to 15% of its body weight in a single meal, though typical meals are smaller. Crocodiles can consume even larger proportions, sometimes gorging on 25% of their body weight when opportunity allows. For a 6-ton T-Rex, 15% would be roughly 900 kilograms. That's more than 6 times its daily caloric requirement. Could it physically consume that much at once? Probably not. The stomach capacity, even for an animal this size, has limits. But consuming 200 to 300 kilograms in an initial feeding session, that seems entirely plausible, enough to sustain the Tyrannosaur for several days if necessary. But remember, T-Rex needed 140 kilograms daily just to maintain basic metabolism. So even a successful kill providing several hundred kilograms of meat only bought a few days. Then the hunt began again. This is the reality of being an apex predator at multi-ton size. You're always looking for the next meal, and sometimes that next meal came from an unexpected source. Your own species. The cannibalism evidence isn't a minor footnote. It's a major component of tyrannosaur feeding ecology. Matthew McLean and colleagues documented bite marks on multiple T-Rex fossils that could only have been made by other T-Rex individuals. The size, spacing, and serration patterns of the marks matched tyrannosaur dentition perfectly. And crucially, no other large predator in the Hell Creek ecosystem could have made those marks. Some of this cannibalism probably involved scavenging dead tyrannosaurs. A multi-ton carcass represents a massive food source. Why wouldn't an opportunistic predator take advantage? But other evidence suggests active aggression between living individuals. Bite marks on skulls, particularly around the face and jaws, indicate face-to-face combat. These weren't feeding traces, they were battle scars from confrontations between tyrannosaurs. Why fight? Competition for territory, mating rights, defensive kills. The same reasons modern large predators sometimes kill each other. And if your opponent dies during the confrontation, well, meat is meat. David Burnham described it as ultra-cannibalism. When predators become overpopulated or resources become scarce, they turn on each other, eliminating competition while simultaneously obtaining food. Brutal efficiency. This behavior might actually have served as a population control mechanism, preventing tyrannosaur populations from growing beyond what the ecosystem could sustain. Self-regulating through cannibalistic culling of weaker or less competitive individuals. Nature's solution to the problem of too many apex predators. The fossil record even hints at possible infanticide and consumption of juveniles by adults. Young tyrannosaurs would have been vulnerable to larger members of their own species, unable to fight back effectively. Easy prey. Whether this was common or occasional remains unclear, but the possibility exists. and it would explain why juvenile tyrannosaurs had such different habitat preferences and hunting strategies than adults. Staying out of the way wasn't just about avoiding competition for food. It was about avoiding becoming food. So when we ask what T-Rex really ate, the complete answer is complex. Large herbivorous dinosaurs, primarily hadrosaurs and ceratopsians, juvenile prey of various species, carrion when available, and sometimes other tyrannosaurs. An opportunistic hypercarnivore that consumed whatever meat it could catch, kill, or scavenge. The ultimate eating machine, driven by relentless caloric demands to hunt almost constantly throughout its life. But how exactly did T-Rex consume its prey once it made the kill? The mechanics reveal something far stranger than you'd expect. Because unlike modern mammals that chew their food, T-Rex didn't chew at all. It operated more like a crocodile crossed with a bird, a feeding strategy paleontologists call inertial feeding. The process started with that devastating bite, puncture and pull. Those massive jaws clamped down, teeth penetrating deep into flesh and bone. Then came the tearing motion. T-Rex would jerk its head backward and sideways, dragging those serrated teeth through tissue like a saw blade through wood. The combination of bite force and pulling motion created catastrophic wounds, chunks of meat and bone separated from the carcass. But here's where it gets interesting. T-Rex couldn't use its tiny arms to manipulate food, couldn't hold prey steady while biting. Instead, everything happened with the head and neck. Those powerful neck muscles that could toss a 110-pound piece of flesh 15 feet into the air. They weren't just for show, they were essential feeding tools. When T-Rex ripped a large piece free, it would throw its head back, using gravity and momentum to fling the meat toward the back of its throat. Then swallow. Whole. Bones, scales, everything. The digestive system handled the rest. We know this from those fossilized coprolites. Crushed bone fragments throughout. T-Rex didn't delicately separate meat from bone like a human eating chicken wings. It consumed everything together and let its stomach acids dissolve what could be dissolved. The bones that survived digestion emerged pulverized, ground into fragments by those incredible bite forces before being swallowed. This bone-crushing ability, called osteophagy, distinguished T-Rex from most other large predators. Even other giant theropods couldn't process bone the way tyrannosaurs could. The adaptation required specific anatomical features working together. First, those banana-shaped teeth. Unlike the blade-like teeth of most carnivorous dinosaurs, tyrannosaur teeth were thick and robust, designed to withstand enormous stresses without breaking. Miriam Reichel's research at the University of Alberta showed these teeth had different functions depending on their position. Front teeth gripped and pulled, side teeth punctured. Back teeth sliced and pushed food toward the throat. Each tooth optimized for its specific role in the feeding sequence. Second, the skull structure itself. Stefan Lautenschlager's biomechanical studies demonstrated that the T-Rex skull could withstand both biting and tearing forces equally well. The bones were reinforced in key stress points. The nasal bones particularly strong to resist compression during those massive bites. This wasn't a delicate skull. It was engineered to handle violence. Third, that jaw gape. T-Rex could open its mouth approximately 80 degrees, far wider than most theropods. This enormous gape served multiple purposes. It allowed T-Rex to bite large prey in a single strike, enabled it to swallow huge pieces of food, and provided the range of motion necessary for that puncture-pull feeding strategy to work effectively. The combination created a feeding machine unlike anything alive today. Emily Rayfield's work at the University of Bristol confirmed what those anatomical features suggested. T-Rex would startle prey with a powerful initial bite, the shock and pain momentarily immobilizing the victim. Then came the backward drag, teeth ripping through flesh and bone. The prey animal's struggles only made things worse. Any attempt to pull away simply drove those serrated teeth deeper, like struggling against a saw. The more you move, the more damage occurs. And those teeth, they replace themselves constantly throughout the Tyrannosaur's life. Approximately 50 to 60 teeth at any given time. But over a lifetime? Hundreds, maybe thousands. Teeth broke during feeding, especially when crushing bone. But replacement teeth grew in continuously. Within weeks, a lost tooth would be replaced. This continuous replacement was essential for an animal that habitually bit into bone. Without it, an adult T-Rex would have worn down its teeth to useless nubs within a few years. But the feeding process wasn't always violent chaos. David Hone's 2010 study of Tarbosaurus, a close T-Rex relative, revealed something unexpected: precision. The researchers documented how this tyrannosaur carefully dismantled a hadrosaur carcass, not smashing randomly through bone and flesh, but deliberately stripping muscle from bone, using its teeth and jaws with surprising delicacy. This suggests tyrannosaurs understood carcass anatomy, knew where the best meat was located, could access it efficiently. When you're burning 140 kilograms of food per day, efficiency matters. Wasting energy on low-quality tissue or spending extra time processing a carcass means less time for other activities, less energy for the next hunt. So, T-Rex developed feeding strategies that maximize nutritional extraction while minimizing effort. Target the best muscle groups first, strip them cleanly, consume bone for the marrow and minerals, leave the rest for scavengers. Speaking of which, T-Rex absolutely did scavenge when opportunities arose. The distinction between hunting and scavenging is less important than we often assume. Modern apex predators do both. Lions scavenge, bears scavenge. Even leopards and tigers will eat carrion if they find it fresh enough. Why would T-Rex be different? A dead Triceratops is still several tons of meat. Whether you killed it or found it dead doesn't change its caloric value. The debate about whether T-Rex was primarily a hunter or primarily a scavenger dominated paleontology for decades. Jack Horner famously argued for the scavenger hypothesis. His reasoning: those tiny arms couldn't hold struggling prey. The massive olfactory bulbs suggested a scavenger's need for long-distance smell detection, and T-Rex didn't appear fast enough to chase down healthy adult hadrosaurs. But every one of those arguments has been challenged or refuted. The arms weren't for holding prey. The jaws did that job. The olfactory bulbs. Recent research suggests they were adapted for tracking mobile, dispersed prey, not for finding distant carcasses. And speed. T-Rex didn't need to be faster than its prey, just persistent enough to outlast it. The smoking gun that settled the debate came from the Hell Creek Formation, a hadrosaur tail vertebra with a T-Rex tooth embedded inside, surrounded by healed bone growth. This wasn't scavenging. This was a failed predation attempt on a living animal. The hadrosaur survived the attack and lived long enough for the bone to heal around the embedded tooth. Direct, unequivocal evidence that T-Rex attacked living prey. Other healed bite marks on Edmontosaurus fossils tell the same story. Tyrannosaur teeth raked across their backs. The prey escaped. Wounds healed. These animals were attacked while alive by hunting tyrannosaurs. The location of many bites provides additional insight, often on the hindquarters or tail region, exactly where modern pursuit predators like lions target their prey, attempting to disable the rear legs and bring the animal down. The parallel is striking, and it makes energetic sense. Adult T-Rex simply couldn't survive on scavenging alone. The math doesn't work. Scavenging requires wandering until you find carrion. That wandering burns energy, lots of it. For a multi-ton animal with massive daily caloric requirements, the energy spent searching would exceed the energy gained from occasional carcasses. Especially in an ecosystem with multiple, smaller, faster scavengers, that could reach dead animals before T-Rex arrived. Juvenile tyrannosaurs might have scavenged more frequently. Smaller body size meant lower energy requirements. Greater speed and agility meant they could reach carcasses faster. Less risk from larger predators while feeding. But adults? They had to hunt. No way around it. Which brings us to hunting strategy. How did a 6-ton animal catch prey that could run faster? The answer involves endurance. Biomechanical studies show Edmontosaurus could outrun T-Rex in short sprints, but only over short distances. T-Rex had better stamina, could maintain pursuit longer, so the strategy wasn't about speed, it was about persistence. Spot a target, begin pursuit. The hadrosaur sprints away. T-Rex follows at a steady pace. The hadrosaur tires, slows down. T-Rex closes the distance, eventually catches up. Then comes that devastating bite. Gregory Paul's research suggests tyrannosaurs targeted specific body parts. The cordofemoralis muscle, the thigh muscles. These powered the prey's locomotion. Disable them and the animal couldn't run, couldn't escape. Some attacks aimed for the abdomen, eviscerating prey, creating massive trauma. Others went for the neck, crushing the trachea, severing major blood vessels. Rapid death. The choice probably depended on circumstances. How desperate was the tyrannosaur? How dangerous was the prey? A healthy adult triceratops could kill a T-Rex with those horns. So maybe the safer approach was targeting the rear, staying away from the dangerous end. But a juvenile ceratopsian? Less risky. Go straight for the neck. End it quickly. T-Rex had to make these calculations constantly. Every hunt involved risk assessment. Is this prey worth the energy expenditure? What's the injury risk? Are there safer options available? Remember, a serious injury for an apex predator often means death. Not immediately, but eventually. An injured T-Rex that couldn't hunt effectively would starve, so selective predation made sense. Target the young, the old, the sick. Animals less capable of fighting back or escaping. This strategy appears in the fossil record. Multiple specimens of juvenile hadrosaurs and ceratopsians show tyrannosaur bite marks. More than you'd expect if tyrannosaurs hunted adults and juveniles equally. The targeting of young prey makes perfect ecological sense. Juveniles provided substantial meat, often travelled in groups, making them easier to locate. Lack the size and experience to defend themselves effectively. Less dangerous than adults. Lower injury risk. Better return on energy investment. David Burnham's research on juvenile tyrannosaur stomach contents confirmed this pattern. The stomach held remains of young dinosaurs, under a year old. Easy targets. This wasn't just opportunistic feeding. It was deliberate prey selection. And it connects to something we discussed earlier, that ontogenetic niche partitioning. Juvenile tyrannosaurs hunting small, fast prey. Adults hunting large herbivores, but both age groups targeting juveniles of other species. Young tyrannosaurs ate baby dinosaurs because that's what they could catch. Adult tyrannosaurs ate juvenile hadrosaurs and ceratopsians because they were easier and safer than adults. The entire ecosystem structured around age-based predator-prey dynamics. But what about the sensory capabilities that enabled this hunting? T-Rex didn't just stumble blindly across the landscape hoping to bump into food. It possessed sophisticated sensory systems optimized for predation. Start with vision. The eye sockets positioned forward on the skull, providing binocular vision better than modern hawks. This wasn't accidental. Binocular vision delivers depth perception, essential for judging distances when attacking prey. Scavengers don't need exceptional depth perception. They need to see carcasses from far away. But pursuit predators? They need to know exactly how far away that running hadrosaur is, when to lunge, where to bite. Jack Horner himself pointed out that the Tyrannosaur lineage showed steadily improving binocular vision over evolutionary time. Why would natural selection favor this if they were pure scavengers? It wouldn't. Better binocular vision only makes sense for active predators. Then there's smell. Those enlarged olfactory bulbs in the tyrannosaur brain initially seemed to support the scavenger hypothesis. After all, vultures have incredible senses of smell for locating carrion. But recent research flipped this interpretation. The olfactory adaptations in T-Rex appear designed for tracking mobile, dispersed prey, not stationary carcasses. Think about it. Herbivores move. They migrate seasonally, travel in herds across large territories. A predator needs to locate these moving food sources. Scent tracking helps, following the smell trail of a hadrosaur herd, detecting prey from a distance, planning approach vectors. That's what those olfactory bulbs enabled. Not finding random dead animals, but tracking living ones. The combination of excellent vision and smell created a formidable hunter. Spot prey visually from a distance. Track it by scent if it moves out of sight. Maintain pursuit until within striking range. Then use that depth perception to time the attack perfectly. These weren't the sensory systems of a scavenger. They were the tools of an apex predator. Now consider how those sensory systems work together during an actual hunt. Picture the Hell Creek Formation, 67 million years ago. A mature T-Rex detecting the scent of an Edmontosaurus herd several miles away. Following that scent trail, using vision once the herd comes into view, selecting a target, probably not the healthiest adult, maybe a juvenile, maybe an individual showing signs of injury or illness. Then the approach. And this is where things get interesting, because the actual hunting strategy employed by T-Rex contradicts some popular assumptions. You've probably seen documentaries showing T-Rex as a high-speed pursuit predator, chasing down fleeing hadrosaurs across open plains. Dramatic, cinematic, probably wrong. Biomechanical studies suggest Edmontosaurus could run faster than T-Rex over short distances, so a straight sprint chase wouldn't work. The hadrosaur would simply outrun the Tyrannosaur. But here's what those studies also revealed. Edmontosaurus had speed. T-Rex had endurance. The hadrosaur could sprint quickly, but tired fast. The Tyrannosaur maintained a slower but sustainable pace for much longer periods. This suggests a persistence hunting strategy. Keep the prey animal in sight. Don't let it rest. Maintain steady pursuit until exhaustion sets in. Eventually, the hadrosaur's muscles fill with lactic acid. Speed drops. T-Rex closes the distance, then strikes. This strategy appears in modern predators. African wild dogs use persistence hunting. So do some human hunter-gatherer societies. You don't need to be faster than your prey. You just need to outlast it. For T-Rex, this approach made perfect sense. Why risk injury in a high-speed chase when you can simply wear down your target? Save energy, reduce danger, still get the meal. But persistence hunting only works if you can keep the prey in view. And that's where those sensory systems become critical again. Vision tracks the fleeing animal. Smell follows its trail if it temporarily disappears behind terrain features. The combination ensures the prey can't escape by simply running out of sight. Once within striking range, the attack itself followed a specific pattern. Gregory Paul's research identified the primary target areas, hindquarters first, specifically the caudofemoralis muscle and thigh muscles. These power the hadrosaur's locomotion. Bite there, and you cripple the animal's ability to run. It can't escape, can't flee. Now it's just a matter of time. Alternative targets included the abdomen. Evisceration kills relatively quickly. Or the neck. Severing the trachea and major blood vessels causes rapid death from blood loss and asphyxiation. Each strategy had advantages. Hindquarter attacks minimize danger to the predator. The prey's head and potential defensive weapons stay far away. Neck attacks killed faster. but required getting close to the hadrosaur's head. Abdominal attacks balance speed and safety. The actual mechanics of the bite reveal sophisticated feeding behavior. Emily Rayfield's research documented the puncture pull strategy. T-Rex didn't just clamp down and hold on. It punctured deeply into flesh and bone, then pulled backward, dragging those massive teeth through tissue. This created devastating wounds, flesh torn away in huge chunks, bones fractured by the immense pressure, blood vessels severed. The structural damage from a single bite could be catastrophic, and T-Rex could deliver multiple bites in quick succession. A 2007 study examined the neck muscles of T-Rex, found them strong enough to toss a 110-pound chunk of flesh 15 feet into the air and catch it. That's the feeding mechanism in action. Tear off massive pieces, use inertial feeding to throw the meat backward into the throat, swallow whole. No chewing necessary. Speaking of teeth, we need to talk about the actual dental arsenal T-Rex possessed. 50 to 60 teeth total, but not all identical. Miriam Reichel's research at the University of Alberta revealed functional differentiation across the tooth row. Front teeth designed for gripping and pulling, side teeth specialized for puncturing, back teeth optimized for slicing and forcing food toward the throat. This wasn't random. It was a precisely engineered feeding system, each tooth type performing a specific role in the process of killing and consuming prey. The shape matters too. Those famous banana-shaped teeth weren't designed for slicing like a knife. They were built to withstand incredible stress. Reichel proposed that the robust shape prevented breakage during violent struggles with prey. Sharp, flat, knife-like teeth would snap under the forces involved, but thick, conical teeth could handle it. They'd puncture deep into bone without shattering. And T-Rex needed that durability because of what it was biting into. Remember the bone-crushing behavior. That puts extreme stress on teeth. The banana shape distributed those forces across a larger surface area. Engineering perfection, courtesy of millions of years of evolution. Now let's discuss what happened after the kill, because the feeding behavior of T-Rex didn't end with death. It continued through carcass processing, and this is where we see some surprisingly delicate behavior from a multi-ton predator. David Hone and Mahito Watabe documented this in their 2010 study of Tarbosaurus feeding traces. Tarbosaurus is a close relative of T-Rex, similar size, similar ecology. The researchers examined a hadrosaur carcass that showed extensive Tarbosaurus feeding damage. What they found contradicted expectations. The Tyrannosaur hadn't just smashed through bones in a chaotic feeding frenzy. It had carefully and methodically stripped muscle from bone. Precision work, intentional, controlled. This suggests Tyrannosaurs understood carcass anatomy, knew where the best meat was located, deliberately targeted those areas, extracted maximum nutritional value from each kill. That precision probably extended to how they accessed bone marrow, because T-Rex didn't just bite randomly, hoping to break bones. The research on osteophagy shows a combination of factors working together. Prodigious bite force between 8,526 and 34,522 newtons at individual teeth. Tooth pressures reaching 718 to 2,974 megapascals. These forces promoted crack propagation in bone. The tooth shape and dental arcade configuration concentrated shear stresses at specific points. And T-Rex used repetitive, localized biting. Not one massive crunch, multiple targeted bites at the same location. This methodical approach fractured bones efficiently, exposed the marrow inside, allowed access to nutrients other predators couldn't reach. Why go to all this trouble? Because bone marrow is incredibly nutritious, high in fat, rich in calories. For a predator with the energy demands of T-Rex, that marrow represented a valuable food source. Other large predators in the ecosystem couldn't access it. Their jaws weren't strong enough, Their teeth would break trying. But T-Rex could. This gave it a competitive advantage. More calories extracted per kill, less need to hunt as frequently, better survival odds during times when prey was scarce. The jaw gape also played a role in feeding efficiency. Stefan Lautenschlager's research calculated that T-Rex could open its jaws to approximately 80 degrees. That's enormous. A human can only manage about 50 degrees. This wide gape allowed T-Rex to bite into massive prey items, take huge chunks in single bites, process carcasses faster, get more food with less effort, and the skull structure itself was optimized to handle the stresses involved. Strong nasal bones, reinforced cranial architecture, the whole skull designed to withstand both biting and tearing forces. When T-Rex grabbed prey and pulled backward, enormous tensile forces tried to rip the skull apart. But the bone structure held firm. Another example of evolutionary optimization for a specific feeding strategy. But here's something that might surprise you. For all its power and ferocity, T-Rex probably didn't always eat immediately after a kill. Large carnivores today often cache food, hide carcasses, return later. This behavior makes sense if you've made a kill larger than you can consume in one sitting. Why waste it? An adult Edmontosaurus could weigh several tons. Even a T-Rex with its massive appetite couldn't eat that much at once. So it's plausible that T-Rex cached kills, covered them with vegetation, marked the location, returned over several days to feed. We can't prove this from fossils, but the logic holds, and it would explain certain feeding patterns we see in the fossil record. The fossil evidence itself reveals patterns beyond individual feeding events. Multiple Triceratops specimens show T-Rex bite marks. Multiple Edmontosaurus fossils display similar damage, but the distribution isn't random. Certain skeletal elements show bite marks more frequently than others. Limb bones, ribs, vertebrae. These are the meatiest parts of the carcass, the areas where feeding would be most productive. Conversely, elements like toe bones rarely show bite marks. Not much meat there. Not worth the effort. This selective feeding demonstrates that T-Rex wasn't just mindlessly chomping everything. It was making calculated decisions about where to focus feeding efforts. Coprolites provide another window into feeding behavior. Those fossilized droppings we discussed earlier, they don't just tell us what T-Rex ate. They tell us how thoroughly it processed food. The 1998 Nature study found crushed bone fragments in T-Rex coprolite, not whole bones, not large chunks, crushed fragments. This means the bone passed through the entire digestive system, got broken down by stomach acid, partially dissolved, the nutrients extracted, then the remaining fragments expelled. It's the same process you see in hyenas today. They eat bones, digest them, pass the fragments. T-Rex did the same thing, but on a much larger scale. Now we need to address something we touched on earlier, but deserves deeper examination: cannibalism. Because the evidence isn't just that T-Rex occasionally scavenged dead members of its own species. It's that this behavior was surprisingly common. Matthew McLean's research documented multiple T-Rex specimens with bite marks from other T-Rex. The scratches were clearly made by large predators with serrated teeth. And T-Rex was the only carnivore in its ecosystem capable of creating such damage. Some of these bite marks show signs of healing, meaning the attacked T-Rex survived, at least temporarily. This suggests aggressive interactions between living individuals, possibly territorial disputes, maybe competition over mates, dominance struggles. But other bite marks show no healing. Deep gouges in bone, tooth marks on skulls, damage consistent with feeding rather than fighting. This is where it gets dark, because it suggests T-Rex didn't just attack rivals, it ate them. David Burnham called it ultra-cannibalism. When predator populations become too dense, they start killing and consuming each other. Population control through predation. It's brutal, but effective, and it appears T-Rex engaged in this behavior regularly, not as a rare occurrence. As a normal part of its ecology, modern big carnivores do this too. Lions kill cubs from rival prides. Brown bears kill and eat black bears. It's a way to eliminate competition while simultaneously gaining nutrition. Two benefits, one action. For T-Rex, this behavior makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. Every other T-Rex in your territory is competition for food, especially other adults. Kill them, and you reduce that competition. Eat them, and you gain calories. Your genes are more likely to pass on. Their genes disappear. Natural selection at its most visceral. But here's what really stands out about T-Rex feeding ecology. The sheer diversity of dietary strategies employed across its lifetime. Juveniles hunting small, fast prey. Subadults transitioning to medium-sized targets. Adults taking down the largest herbivores in the ecosystem. Opportunistic scavenging at all ages. Selective predation on vulnerable individuals. Cannibalism when circumstances warranted. Bone crushing to access marrow. Careful carcass processing to maximize nutritional extraction. This wasn't a simple predator with a simple strategy. This was an adaptive, flexible, sophisticated apex carnivore, employing whatever tactics the situation demanded. And that flexibility probably explains its success. T-Rex dominated its ecosystem for over 2 million years. From its appearance around 68 million years ago until the asteroid impact 66 million years ago. That's remarkable longevity for an apex predator, and it was only possible because T-Rex could adapt its feeding strategies to changing conditions. Prey populations fluctuated, switched targets, competition increased, turned cannibal, easy prey available, take it, need more calories, crush bones for marrow, every tool in the predatory toolkit deployed as needed. So what made this possible? How did T-Rex achieve this level of ecological dominance? The answer lies in something we've touched on but haven't fully explored: sensory capabilities. Because T-Rex wasn't just powerful and adaptable, it was equipped with some of the most sophisticated sensory systems of any predator in its time. Start with vision. The eye sockets of tyrannosaurs are positioned so that the eyes would point forward. This gave them binocular vision slightly better than modern hawks. Most theropod dinosaurs had eyes positioned more laterally. Wide field of view but limited depth perception. T-Rex went the opposite direction. Sacrificed peripheral vision for stereoscopic depth perception. Why? Because predators that actively hunt need to accurately judge distances. An ambush predator lying in wait doesn't need precise depth perception. But a pursuit predator chasing down prey across varied terrain absolutely does. You need to know exactly how far away that Edmontosaurus is, exactly when to launch your attack, exactly where to place your bite. Binocular vision provides that precision, and the Tyrannosaur lineage shows a history of steadily improving binocular vision over millions of years. Natural selection doesn't favor that kind of long-term trend in scavengers. Scavengers don't need to accurately judge the distance to a carcass that isn't moving. This is evidence written directly into skull anatomy. T-Rex was built to hunt. But vision was only part of the sensory arsenal. The olfactory bulbs in T-Rex were enormous. A significant portion of the brain was dedicated to processing scents. For years, this was used as evidence that T-Rex was primarily a scavenger. The logic seemed sound. Scavengers need good noses to locate distant carcasses. Vultures can smell death from miles away. So big olfactory bulbs must mean scavenger, right? Wrong. More recent research completely flipped that interpretation. Studies determined that the olfactory lobes of modern birds, which include scavengers like vultures, are actually poorly developed. The enlarged olfactory lobes in T-Rex represent a secondary adaptation for something else entirely: predation navigation, tracking mobile, dispersed prey. Think about what an active predator needs. It needs to track prey animals across vast territories, detect the scent trails of herbivore herds, identify individuals that are sick, injured, or otherwise vulnerable, distinguish between species from scent alone, follow prey that has moved through an area hours earlier. All of this requires exceptional olfactory processing, not for finding dead things, for hunting live ones. Combine that vision and smell with what we know about brain structure. T-Rex had a relatively large brain for a non-avian dinosaur. Not mammal-level intelligence, but sophisticated enough for complex behaviors. The brain structure suggests capabilities for spatial memory, learning, possibly even problem-solving. This matters because successful predation isn't just about physical tools. It's about strategy. Remembering where prey congregates, learning which hunting techniques work on which species, adapting tactics when initial approaches fail. A pure scavenger doesn't need that cognitive complexity. Scavenging is opportunistic. You wander until you smell death. No strategy required. But hunting benefits enormously from intelligence and memory. Now consider how these sensory systems work together during an actual hunt. Picture an adult T-Rex in the Hell Creek Formation. Dawn, temperature rising. The animal stands motionless on a low ridge. Those forward-facing eyes scan the floodplain below. Movement catches its attention. A herd of Edmontosaurus, maybe 20 individuals, grazing near a river. The T-Rex watches, evaluating, looking for weakness. There, one animal moving slower than the others. Slight limp in the left hind leg, possible injury. The predator shifts its position. Wind direction matters. It needs to approach from downwind, keep its scent from reaching the herd. Those massive olfactory bulbs are processing air currents, detecting the scent markers of the prey, confirming species, assessing numbers, building a mental map of the situation. The approach begins, slow, deliberate, using terrain for concealment. The binocular vision constantly recalculating distance. Depth perception updating with each step. 200 meters, 100, 50. The injured Edmontosaurus still hasn't detected the threat. The other herd members are focused on feeding. 20 meters. Now the T-Rex accelerates. Biomechanical studies suggest it could reach speeds around 25 miles per hour. Not fast by modern standards, but fast enough. The herd scatters. Panic. The injured individual tries to run, but the damaged leg fails. It stumbles, falls. The T-Rex closes the distance, jaws open, 80 degrees of gape. Those banana-shaped teeth aim for the hindquarters. The bite lands. 57,000 newtons of force. The caudofemoralis muscle tears. Bone cracks. The Edmontosaurus collapses. Unable to stand. Unable to flee. The predator doesn't need to kill it immediately. The injury is disabling. Fatal. It's just a matter of time. This entire sequence required sophisticated sensory processing at every stage. Visual identification of vulnerable prey, olfactory assessment of wind conditions, spatial memory to navigate terrain, distance calculation for the final attack, precise targeting of specific anatomy, not the behavior of a simple scavenger stumbling onto carcasses. Let's talk about another aspect of T-Rex feeding that demonstrates remarkable sophistication. Carcass processing. Because how an animal takes apart its food reveals a lot about its capabilities. In 2010, David Hone and Mahito Watabe published research on Tarbosaurus, a close relative of T-Rex. They examined a hadrosaur carcass that showed clear evidence of how the tyrannosaur fed. The results were surprising. The predator didn't just smash through flesh and bone in a gory spectacle. It worked carefully, methodically, using its jaws to strip muscle from bone with precision. This challenges the image of tyrannosaurs as mindless eating machines that just crushed everything. The reality was more nuanced. Yes, they could pulverize bone when needed, but they could also employ delicate, controlled movements, extracting maximum nutrition while minimizing energy expenditure. Think about what this requires. Fine motor control of a massive skull, sensory feedback to distinguish muscle from bone, learned technique passed down through generations or developed through individual experience. This is sophisticated predatory behavior, the kind you see in modern apex predators like big cats. A lion doesn't just tear randomly at a carcass. It knows which cuts of meat are richest, where the organs are located, how to access bone marrow efficiently. T-Rex appears to have possessed similar knowledge. The social dimension of feeding also deserves examination. We know from trackways that some tyrannosaurs may have traveled in groups, 3 individuals moving together. Does this mean pack hunting? Maybe. The evidence is debated, but even if T-Rex didn't hunt cooperatively like wolves, group behavior would still impact feeding. Multiple individuals at a kill site means competition, dominance hierarchies, feeding order. Modern Komodo dragons show similar patterns. Multiple dragons converge on a carcass. The largest individuals feed first. Smaller ones wait their turn or risk getting bitten. The bite marks found on T-Rex skulls suggest similar interactions. These weren't feeding bites, they were dominance bites, warning strikes, reminders of hierarchy, probably occurring at carcasses where multiple T-Rex competed for access. The positioning of bites on the face and skull supports this interpretation. These are the areas where modern predators deliver non-lethal disciplinary strikes. So even if T-Rex didn't hunt cooperatively, it likely engaged in complex social behaviors around food, establishing pecking orders, defending kills, possibly even sharing carcasses within family groups while excluding outsiders. Here's something that often gets overlooked: seasonal variation in diet. Modern apex predators adjust their hunting strategies seasonally. Prey migrations, breeding seasons, weather patterns, all influence what predators eat and how they obtain it. T-Rex would have faced similar pressures. The Hell Creek Formation shows evidence of seasonal climate variation, wet seasons, dry seasons, temperature fluctuations. Prey behavior would have shifted accordingly. Hadrosaur herds might have migrated seasonally. Ceratopsians could have concentrated in different areas depending on vegetation growth. This means T-Rex couldn't rely on a single hunting strategy year-round. It had to adapt, track prey movements, shift hunting grounds, possibly even alter which species it targeted based on availability. This requires cognitive flexibility, memory of seasonal patterns, learning from previous years. Again, not the profile of a simple scavenger. Scavenging doesn't require tracking seasonal prey movements. Hunting does. The energetic calculations become even more interesting when you factor in failed hunts. Modern predators fail more often than they succeed. Lions have a success rate around 25%. Wolves closer to 15%. Hunting is hard, even for apex predators. T-Rex almost certainly faced similar odds, which means that 6-ton body needed to compensate for failed attempts. If you need 140 kilograms of meat per day, but only succeed in 1 out of every 4 hunts, you're not eating daily. You're feast or famine. This is why the bone-crushing adaptation was so valuable. When you do make a kill, extract every possible calorie. Crush the bones, digest the marrow, get everything you can. Because you don't know when the next successful hunt will happen. Scavenging could supplement this. Finding a carcass between hunts, opportunistic feeding. But the math doesn't work for pure scavenging. Not for an animal that size with those energy demands. The primary strategy had to be active predation. One detail that beautifully illustrates T-Rex feeding sophistication involves tooth replacement. T-Rex constantly replaced its teeth throughout life. As teeth wore down or broke during feeding, new ones grew in. This is common in reptiles. But here's the interesting part. The replacement rate varied by tooth position. Front teeth replaced more frequently than back teeth. Why? Because different teeth experience different stresses. The front teeth gripped and pulled. High stress, frequent damage, rapid replacement needed. The back teeth sliced and pushed food toward the throat. Lower stress, less frequent replacement required. This wasn't random. It was an optimized system. Energy invested in tooth replacement was allocated based on actual wear patterns, maximum efficiency, minimum waste. This kind of optimization emerges from millions of years of natural selection, fine-tuning every aspect of predatory anatomy. Every detail serves the ultimate function, killing and consuming prey as efficiently as possible. Consider also the implications of that jaw gape. 80 degrees. Enormous. Why so wide? Because T-Rex needed to bite large three-dimensional targets. A flat-jawed predator can deliver powerful bites, but only to surfaces it can reach. T-Rex needed to bite into the bodies of massive prey, wrap its jaws around thick limbs, encompass large chunks of flesh and bone. The wide gape made this possible. It could bite deeply into a Triceratops flank, engulf an Edmontosaurus thigh, grip a struggling prey animal's neck. Each of these requires different jaw angles, different approaches. The 80-degree gape provided versatility, adaptability to whatever the hunting situation demanded. Combined with those differentiated teeth, front for gripping, sides for puncturing, back for slicing, and you have a feeding system of remarkable sophistication, purpose-built for processing large prey in the most efficient manner possible. The fossil record preserves one more critical piece of evidence: bite mark distribution on prey species. When researchers map where T-Rex bite marks appear on herbivore fossils, patterns emerge. Hadrosaurs show heavy bite damage on hindquarters and tails. Ceratopsians show damage concentrated on flanks and necks. This isn't random. These are targeted attacks on specific anatomical regions. The hindquarters of hadrosaurs housed massive locomotor muscles. Bite there, and you disable the prey's ability to run. The flanks of ceratopsians were less protected than the head with its frill and horns. Bite there and you avoid defensive weapons while still inflicting massive damage. This demonstrates learned hunting strategies, probably refined over individual lifetimes. Possibly even transmitted culturally if T-Rex had any capacity for social learning. Either way, it shows strategic thinking, analysis of vulnerabilities, exploitation of weaknesses. Exactly what you'd expect from an apex predator. Exactly what you wouldn't expect from a scavenger. Now let's talk about that cannibalism evidence, because it's disturbing and fascinating in equal measure. Multiple T-Rex fossils show bite marks that could only have been made by other T-Rex individuals. The size of the teeth, the spacing, the force required. No other predator in the late Cretaceous ecosystem could produce these marks. Some of these bite marks appear on bones with no signs of healing, suggesting the individual was already dead when consumed, scavenging a dead member of your own species, not uncommon in modern predators. But other specimens tell a darker story. Bite marks on skulls, facial bones, areas that suggest face-to-face confrontation. These weren't gentle interactions. These were violent encounters between living animals. Modern large carnivores do this. Lions kill other lions. Bears kill other bears. It's territorial, competitive, sometimes cannibalistic. T-Rex likely operated the same way. Eliminate competition, reduce the number of mouths competing for limited prey. And yes, get a meal in the process. It's ruthlessly efficient. The kind of behavior you'd expect from an apex predator operating at the absolute limits of what an ecosystem can support. The term one researcher used was ultra-cannibalism. When predator populations become dense enough, They start regulating their own numbers through direct predation on each other. It's population control through violence. This behavior tells us something important about T-Rex ecology. These animals weren't rare, scattered individuals. They were common enough that encounters between adults were frequent, common enough that competition mattered. The Hell Creek Formation shows T-Rex at densities comparable to their primary prey species. That's unusual. Most ecosystems support far fewer predators than prey animals. But T-Rex dominated so completely that it could maintain unusually high population densities, which inevitably led to conflict, to competition, to cannibalism. The fossil record preserves evidence of this brutal reality. T-Rex didn't just eat other dinosaurs, it ate itself. Let's shift gears and talk about something that fundamentally changed our understanding of tyrannosaur ecology: the discovery of juvenile diet. For decades, scientists wondered what young T-Rex ate. The adults were clearly hunting massive prey, multi-ton herbivores. But what about the juveniles, the teenagers, the subadults? A juvenile T-Rex wasn't built like an adult. The proportions were different: lighter build, longer legs relative to body size, skull shape less robust. Bite force estimates for a 10-year-old tyrannosaur show only about 13% of adult maximum force. Still powerful, comparable to a lion or alligator, but nowhere near adult bone-crushing levels. This suggested different prey, different hunting strategies, different ecological niche. And in 2023, we got confirmation. Scientists analysed the fossilized stomach contents of a juvenile Gorgosaurus, close relative of T-Rex, similar ecology, similar development pattern. Inside the stomach cavity, preserved for 75 million years, were the remains of two small dinosaurs, both under a year old. Hind limbs, leg bones, juvenile prey. This is the only known example of preserved stomach contents in a tyrannosaur, the only direct evidence of what these animals actually swallowed. And it confirmed what biomechanical studies had suggested. Young tyrannosaurs hunted small, fast prey. The implications are profound. This means tyrannosaurs occupied multiple ecological niches simultaneously. Juveniles hunted small animals. Adults hunted massive herbivores. Different prey bases. No direct competition between age groups. It's called ontogenetic niche partitioning. The same species filling different roles at different life stages. This strategy might explain why tyrannosaurs dominated their ecosystems so completely. They weren't just apex predators, they were filling multiple predatory roles across the size spectrum. Look at the Hell Creek ecosystem. Small carnivorous raptors like Paranicodon, rare. Mid-sized predators, also rare. Then T-Rex, common. As common as Edmontosaurus, its primary prey. That distribution is bizarre unless you understand that juvenile T-Rex were functionally the mid-sized predators. They weren't competing with adults. They were competing with raptors, and apparently winning. An adult T-Rex might ignore a small lizard or juvenile dinosaur. Too small, not worth the energy. But a juvenile tyrannosaur? Perfect target, perfect size. Enough calories to justify the hunt. This created a dynasty, a family that controlled the entire predatory landscape, from small prey to the largest herbivores, all tyrannosaurs, just different ages. No other predatory lineage achieved this level of ecological dominance. The transition from juvenile to adult wasn't just physical growth, it was a complete transformation of feeding ecology. A young tyrannosaur was a pursuit predator, fast, agile, chasing down small, quick prey. The long legs helped, the lighter build helped. The teeth were still blade-like, still designed for slicing rather than crushing. Then around age 10 to 15, everything changed. The skull deepened, became more robust. The teeth thickened, became banana-shaped, built for stress resistance rather than cutting efficiency. Bite force increased exponentially. By age 20, An adult tyrannosaur could generate forces 50 times greater than its 10-year-old self. The hunting strategy shifted accordingly. No more chasing small prey. Now it's stalking massive herbivores, ambush, endurance pursuit, targeting animals that outweigh you, different weapons, different tactics, different world. This transformation happened to every T-Rex that survived to adulthood. Built-in ecological flexibility, adaptability across the entire lifespan. Natural selection favored this strategy because it worked. It eliminated competition within the species while maximizing resource exploitation across the ecosystem. Brilliant, ruthless, effective. Now let's address the social behavior question. Did T-Rex hunt in groups? The evidence is complicated. Some tyrannosaur trackways show multiple individuals moving together, 3 sets of footprints, similar size, same direction, parallel paths. This could indicate cooperative behavior, pack movement, group hunting, or it could indicate 3 individuals who happen to be traveling the same direction at roughly the same time. Coincidence rather than coordination. Fossil assemblages sometimes preserve multiple tyrannosaurs in close proximity. The Rainbows and Unicorns Quarry in Utah. Multiple individuals. Different ages. Same location. Family group? Hunting party? Or just multiple animals drawn to the same resource independently? We don't know. Modern apex predators show the full range. Some are solitary. Tigers, leopards, most bears. Others are social. Lions, wolves, hyenas. Body size doesn't predict social behavior. Neither does hunting strategy. The bite marks on T-Rex skulls suggest aggressive interactions between adults. Face biting, dominance displays, possibly territorial conflict. That behavior fits better with solitary or loosely social patterns, not tight cooperative groups. But juveniles might have been different. If young tyrannosaurs hunted smaller, faster prey, cooperation might have increased success rates, pack tactics, coordinated pursuit. Then, as they matured and transitioned to hunting massive slow prey, social bonds might have weakened. Adults becoming more solitary. It's speculation, informed speculation based on modern analogues, but still speculation. What we can say definitively is this. T-Rex interactions with other T-Rex were complex, sometimes cooperative, sometimes competitive, sometimes violent. The full picture remains unclear. Let's return to the mechanics of feeding itself, because the process of actually consuming a kill reveals fascinating details. T-Rex didn't chew. Mammals chew. We grind food between molars, break it down mechanically before swallowing. T-Rex swallowed chunks whole. The feeding process started with the kill. Bite, puncture, pull, inflict maximum damage, wait if necessary for the prey to weaken from blood loss and shock. Once the prey was dead or incapacitated, feeding began. Those differentiated teeth came into play. Front teeth gripped the carcass, anchored the head. Then the powerful neck muscles pulled backward, tearing away flesh. The side teeth punctured deeper, created purchase points, allowed the jaws to work into the body cavity. Back teeth sliced, forced chunks toward the throat. Then, inertial feeding, the same technique crocodiles use. T-Rex would throw its head back, using momentum to flip meat to the back of the mouth. Gravity and muscle action pushed the food into the throat, down the esophagus, into the stomach. No chewing, no grinding, just tear and swallow. Scientists calculated that T-Rex neck muscles could toss a 110-pound chunk of meat 15 feet into the air and catch it. That's the power required for inertial feeding on this scale. The stomach had to handle bones, whole bones, crushed but not pulverized, mixed with flesh and organs. Digestive acids broke down the organic material. Powerful acids, concentrated. The coprolites show this. bone fragments present, but partially dissolved. The digestive system extracted calcium, phosphorus, marrow nutrients. What couldn't be digested was excreted. Those massive coprolites, filled with crushed bone, evidence of a diet rich in skeletal material. This entire process was optimized for efficiency, minimum energy expenditure, maximum nutrient extraction. A successful kill might provide enough calories for several days, maybe a week, depending on the size of the prey and how much could be consumed before scavengers moved in. Smaller predators would have circled any T-Rex kill, waiting for an opportunity, darting in when the giant predator stepped away. T-Rex probably tolerated this to some degree. A 6-ton predator can't guard every scrap. Some loss to scavengers was inevitable, but the bulk of the carcass, the best parts, those belong to the killer. Priority access to resources. The primary advantage of being an apex predator. The fossil record shows one more feeding behavior worth mentioning. Carcass processing. A study of Tarbosaurus, T-Rex's Asian cousin, documented careful, methodical dismemberment of a hadrosaur carcass. Not random tearing, not chaotic destruction. Deliberate stripping of muscle from bone. Systematic processing. Extracting maximum value from the kill. The jaws worked along muscle attachment points. Separated tissue cleanly. Removed meat in organized fashion. This requires sensory feedback, awareness of anatomy, understanding of where muscles attach, where tendons connect, where the best meat is located. It's sophisticated. More sophisticated than simple crushing and swallowing would suggest. It indicates learning, experience, refinement of technique over time. An adult T-Rex had probably processed hundreds of carcasses over its lifetime, learned the anatomy of Edmontosaurus, Triceratops, other prey species, knew where to bite, where to pull, how to maximize food intake while minimizing effort. This knowledge might have been partly instinctive, partly learned through trial and error, possibly even transmitted socially if juveniles learned by watching adults. Regardless of the mechanism, it represents behavioral complexity, problem solving, adaptation, not mindless eating, strategic consumption. Everything about T-Rex feeding ecology points to the same conclusion. This was a highly specialized, supremely adapted apex predator. Every aspect of its anatomy, every behavior, every feeding strategy, optimized through millions of years of evolution. The result was an animal that dominated its ecosystem more completely than almost any predator before or since. Ecological dominance defined T. Rex's existence. No other predator in the Hell Creek Formation approached its size or power. Smaller carnivores existed, raptors, mid-sized theropods, but they occupied completely different niches. They hunted different prey, used different strategies, avoided direct competition with the apex predator. This hierarchical structure meant T-Rex faced minimal competition for large prey. When an adult tyrannosaur made a kill, other predators waited, watched from distance, hoping for scraps after the giant finished feeding. This lack of competition created evolutionary pressure in an unexpected direction. T-Rex didn't need to be faster than its prey over long distances. It needed endurance, stamina, the ability to pursue prey until exhaustion forced a mistake. Biomechanical studies reveal something fascinating about tyrannosaur locomotion. Edmontosaurus was faster. Over short sprints, the hadrosaur could outrun its predator. But T-Rex had superior endurance. Once locked onto a target, the tyrannosaur could maintain pursuit. Mile after mile, the hadrosaur would tire, slow. Eventually, exhaustion would end the chase. This pursuit strategy appears in the fossil record through injury patterns. Bite marks on hadrosaur tail vertebrae. Damage to hindquarter bones. These locations match modern pursuit predator attack patterns. Lions in the Kalahari, target the same areas, hamstring the prey, disable the legs, bring down the animal. T-Rex employed the same tactics 66 million years ago. The sensory systems supporting these hunts were remarkably sophisticated. Binocular vision better than modern hawks. Forward-facing eyes provided depth perception critical for pursuit hunting. Scavengers don't need precise depth perception. They need to locate carcasses. But active predators chasing living prey through varied terrain? Depth perception becomes essential. Natural selection favored improving vision in the Tyrannosaur lineage, generation after generation. Better hunters produced more offspring. Vision improved. The olfactory system tells a different story than early researchers assumed. Yes, T-Rex had enlarged olfactory bulbs. Yes, it possessed an acute sense of smell. But recent studies challenge the scavenger interpretation. Modern birds have poorly developed olfactory systems, yet tyrannosaurs invested heavily in smell. Why? The answer appears to be prey tracking. Following dispersed, mobile prey across vast territories requires scent tracking. Not for finding D'd carcasses, for locating living herds, following trails, anticipating movements. This reinterpretation transforms how we understand T-Rex hunting behavior. The predator likely tracked prey herds across its territory, followed scent trails to locate Edmontosaurus groups, used vision to select targets once the herd was found, then pursued until the kill was made. Sophisticated, strategic, completely incompatible with pure scavenging. Energetics seal the case against scavenging as a primary strategy. A 6-ton animal requires approximately 140 kilograms of meat daily. That equals the caloric intake of 80 humans. Finding that much food through scavenging alone, nearly impossible. Smaller predators reach carcasses first. They're faster, more mobile. By the time a multi-ton tyrannosaur arrived, the best meat would be gone. Bones would remain, but bones alone can't sustain an animal with such massive energy requirements. The mathematics don't support scavenging as viable. Active hunting becomes necessary, not optional, essential for survival. This explains the fossil evidence. Healed bite wounds on prey animals, embedded teeth surrounded by regrown bone. These specimens prove attempted predation. The prey survived the attack, escaped, lived long enough for bones to heal. That's the smoking gun. Definitive proof T-Rex attacked living animals. Scavenging dead carcasses doesn't leave healed wounds. Only failed predation attempts create this evidence. And if we're finding failed attempts, successful hunts must have been far more common. Most predation succeeds. Prey dies. Gets consumed. Leaves no healed injuries. The few failures that fossilized represent a tiny fraction of total hunting attempts. Statistical probability suggests hundreds or thousands of successful hunts for every preserved failed attempt. T-Rex was hunting, constantly, successfully. Cannibalism adds another dimension to dietary behavior. Bite marks on T-Rex bones made by other T-Rex. Multiple specimens, different locations, different time periods. This wasn't isolated behavior. It was recurring, possibly common. Modern large carnivores exhibit similar behavior. Lions kill other lions. Bears kill other bears. It's competition elimination, resource control. Sometimes it's opportunistic scavenging of dead conspecifics. Sometimes it's active aggression. The fossil evidence can't always distinguish between the two. But the presence of T-Rex bite marks on T-Rex bones is undeniable. The term ultra-cannibalism has been applied. When predator populations become dense, intraspecific violence increases. Killing competitors provides dual benefits, eliminates future competition, provides immediate calories. From a purely evolutionary perspective, it's efficient, brutal, but efficient. This behavior may have functioned as population regulation, preventing T-Rex numbers from exceeding ecosystem carrying capacity. self-limiting through cannibalistic aggression. The juvenile to adult transition represents perhaps the most dramatic dietary shift in any known predator. A 10-year-old tyrannosaur possessed only 13% of adult bite force. Its skull was narrow, built for slashing rather than crushing. It hunted completely different prey than adults. Small dinosaurs, juvenile animals, quick, agile targets. The 2023 Gorgosaurus stomach contents confirmed this. 2 juvenile dinosaurs, both under 1 year old, found preserved in a teenage tyrannosaur's gut. Direct evidence of what young tyrannosaurs actually ate. Not inference, not speculation, preserved stomach contents. The fossil record rarely provides this level of certainty. By age 20, the same animal transformed completely. Massive skull, crushing bite force, bone-pulverizing jaws. It now hunted hadrosaurs, ceratopsians, multi-ton herbivores. The dietary shift was total. This ontogenetic niche partitioning had profound ecological effects. Juveniles and adults weren't competing. They occupied different ecological roles, hunted different prey, used different habitats, employed different strategies. This may explain tyrannosaur ecological dominance. Most predator species compete internally. Adults and juveniles target the same prey. Resources become limited. Population growth stalls. But tyrannosaurs partitioned resources by age. Juveniles filled the small predator niche. Adults dominated large prey hunting. No internal competition. Maximum efficiency. The Hell Creek ecosystem reflects this. Small raptors existed but were rare. Mid-sized predators were nearly absent. Then T-Rex, abundant, as common as its primary prey. That distribution is unusual. It suggests tyrannosaurs were filling multiple predatory niches simultaneously through age-based specialization. The feeding mechanics themselves reveal learning and adaptation. That Tarbosaurus specimen carefully dismembering a hadrosaur. Methodical muscle removal, systematic processing. This requires anatomical knowledge, understanding where muscles attach, where tendons connect, where to apply force for maximum efficiency. This knowledge likely accumulated through experience, a juvenile tyrannosaur learning prey anatomy through trial and error, refining technique with each kill. By adulthood, the predator knew exactly how to process a carcass, where to bite, how to pull, optimal meat extraction with minimal energy expenditure. Some of this may have been instinctive, hardwired behavior, but the precision suggests learning, possibly even social transmission, if Juve. Niles observed adults. The fossil evidence can't confirm social learning, but the behavioral complexity is undeniable. Social behavior remains debated. Trackways from British Columbia show 3 tyrannosaurs moving together. Possible pack behavior, possible family group, possible coincidence. The evidence is suggestive, but not conclusive. Bite marks on tyrannosaur skulls complicate the picture. Aggression between individuals, dominance displays, mating competition. These behaviors don't align with cooperative pack hunting. Modern analogues provide mixed signals. Komodo dragons are solitary but aggregate at large carcasses. Crocodiles are territorial but tolerate each other in certain contexts. Tyrannosaur social structure may have been similarly complex, context-dependent, variable. If pack hunting occurred, even occasionally, the implications are significant. Coordinated tyrannosaurs could take down larger prey. Sauropods, massive ceratopsians, prey too dangerous for solitary hunters. Some evidence suggests sauropods were on the menu. Alamosaurus overlapped with T-Rex in North America, a 40-ton herbivore. Hunting one alone would be extremely dangerous. But a group? Possible. The fossil record hints, but doesn't confirm. What the evidence does confirm is versatility. T-Rex was a generalist hypercarnivore. It ate everything available: hadrosaurs, ceratopsians, ankylosaurs, pachycephalosaurs, ornithopods, possibly sauropods, other tyrannosaurs, whatever could be killed or scavenged. No specialized prey preference, no dietary restriction. Opportunistic, adaptable. This versatility contributed to success. Specialists suffer when primary prey declines. Generalists switch targets. Adapt, survive. T-Rex thrived for approximately 2 million years, remained the apex predator until the asteroid impact ended the Cretaceous. That longevity suggests successful adaptation, effective feeding strategies, sustainable predation pressure on prey populations. The ecosystem remained balanced, predator and prey coexisting, neither driving the other to extinction. Then everything changed. 66 million years ago, the Chicxulub impact, mass extinction. The food chain collapsed from the bottom up. Plant die-off, herbivore starvation, predator starvation. Large animals suffered most. High metabolic demands, insufficient food. T-Rex disappeared, forever, but the legacy remains, preserved in bone, bite marks, coprolites, tooth-scarred prey skeletons, healed wounds, embedded teeth, each fossil a fragment of behavior. A moment frozen in deep time. Together they reveal a predator of extraordinary capability, unmatched bite force, sophisticated sensory systems, complex hunting strategies, behavioral flexibility. Ontogenetic specialization, ecological dominance. For millions of years, T-Rex ruled the Hell Creek Formation, the undisputed apex predator. Nothing challenged its supremacy, nothing matched its power. The most formidable land predator of the late Cretaceous, possibly the most formidable terrestrial predator in Earth's history. What T-Rex really ate was everything: meat, bone, marrow, organs, other predators, its own species, from juvenile dinosaurs to multi-ton herbivores, from fresh kills to opportunistic carrion. The diet was as varied as the ecosystem allowed. The feeding strategies as sophisticated as any modern apex predator. More sophisticated in some ways. That bone-crushing ability. That evolutionary investment in osteophagy. Unique, specialized, highly effective. It gave T-Rex access to nutrients other predators couldn't reach. Calcium from pulverized bone, marrow from crushed shafts, complete carcass utilization, maximum energy extraction. Every adaptation served this purpose. The massive skull, the banana-shaped teeth, the powerful jaw muscles, the reinforced cranial structure, the sophisticated sensory systems, the muscular neck, the strong hind limbs, the reduced forelimbs that shifted the center of mass forward. Everything optimized for killing and consuming large prey. 66 million years of separation. Yet we can reconstruct diet with remarkable precision, not speculation, evidence. Fossils don't lie, they preserve truth. Sometimes incomplete truth, sometimes fragmentary truth, but truth nonetheless. Each new discovery refines understanding. The 2023 juvenile stomach contents, the healed hadrosaur vertebrae, the embedded tooth crown, the cannibalized bones, the coprolites, the bite mark analyses, the biomechanical studies, the energetic calculations. Together, they paint a comprehensive picture. T-Rex the hunter, T-Rex the scavenger, T-Rex the cannibal, T-Rex the apex predator, all simultaneously, all accurately. The debate between hunting and scavenging was always false dichotomy. Nature doesn't work in absolutes. Predators exploit every available resource. T-Rex exemplified this principle. The ultimate opportunist. The consummate carnivore. When you strip away speculation and focus solely on evidence, this is what remains. A predator supremely adapted to its environment, dominating its ecosystem through size, power, and versatility. Hunting successfully enough to sustain a multi-ton body. Processing carcasses with learned efficiency. Crushing bones no other predator could penetrate. surviving for 2 million years at the top of the food chain. That's what the fossils tell us. That's what T-Rex really ate. That's what the evidence supports. Nothing more, nothing less. Just the truth, preserved in stone. The Tyrannosaur lineage began roughly 150 million years ago. Small predators. Unremarkable. Early tyrannosaurs were medium-sized hunters, occupying middle tiers of their ecosystems. Nothing suggested the giants to come. Then something changed. The fossil record shows steady size increase. Generation after generation. Larger skulls, more robust bodies, stronger jaws. By the late Cretaceous, tyrannosaurs had transformed into apex predators across Asia and North America. T-Rex represented the pinnacle of this evolutionary trajectory. The largest tyrannosaur, the most powerful bite, the most specialized anatomy, 13 meters long, 6 tons. Jaws capable of generating forces no terrestrial animal has matched since. This wasn't random. This was natural selection, optimizing for a specific ecological role. Large prey hunting, bone crushing, resource monopolization. Every competitor was outcompeted, driven to extinction or relegated to marginal niches. By 68 million years ago, T-Rex dominated completely. The Hell Creek Formation belonged to tyrannosaurs, but dominance created vulnerability. Specialization has costs. When the asteroid struck, the ecosystem collapsed. Large animals died first. High metabolic demands. Insufficient food. No prey meant no predators. T-Rex vanished. 2 million years of success. Gone in geological instants. Yet something survived. Small theropods, feathered dinosaurs, the ancestors of modern birds. Today, chickens and sparrows carry tyrannosaur DNA. The lineage persists. Diminished. Transformed, but unbroken. When you watch a hawk hunt or an eagle strike, you're seeing echoes. Distant genetic memory. The predatory legacy that built T-Rex still functions, just smaller, different, adapted to new circumstances. The fossil record preserves what birds cannot: size, power, the bone-crushing capability. Those traits died with T-Rex, but the fundamental architecture survived. Binocular vision, hollow bones, rapid metabolism. These tyrannosaur innovations persist in modern birds. Evolution doesn't discard what works, it repurposes. So what did T-Rex really eat? The evidence gives clear answers. Large herbivorous dinosaurs primarily, hadrosaurs most frequently, triceratops regularly, ankylosaurs occasionally, possibly sauropods opportunistically. Other tyrannosaurs when circumstances aligned. Juveniles hunted completely different prey. Small dinosaurs. Swift targets. Age-based specialization. Scavenging supplemented hunting. Opportunistic feeding on carcasses. But energetics demanded active predation. The mathematics allow no other conclusion. Bone crushing distinguished T-Rex from other predators. Osteophagy. Marrow access. Nutrient extraction exceeding any competitor. This specialization provided competitive advantage, more calories per kill, better survival during lean periods. The feeding mechanics were sophisticated. Puncture pull strategy, differentiated teeth, inertial feeding, methodical carcass processing, learning, experience, behavioral complexity, sensory systems supported hunting, binocular vision for depth perception, olfactory tracking for prey location, brain structure suggesting spatial memory, problem-solving capability. Social behavior remains uncertain. Possible pack hunting, possible solitary with occasional association. The evidence permits multiple interpretations. What's certain is complex intraspecific interactions, sometimes cooperative, sometimes aggressive, sometimes cannibalistic. The juvenile to adult transformation represents remarkable ecological flexibility, completely different predators at different life stages, niche partitioning within a single species. This strategy may explain tyrannosaur dominance, No internal competition. Maximum resource exploitation. 75 million years separate us from T-Rex. Yet we can reconstruct diet with scientific rigor. Healed bite wounds prove hunting. Coprolites reveal bone consumption. Stomach contents show juvenile prey selection. Bite mark patterns indicate targeting strategies. Each discovery refines understanding. Each fossil adds data. The picture grows clearer. Not complete, never complete, but increasingly accurate. T-Rex was not a simple killing machine, not a mindless predator. It was a sophisticated apex carnivore, employing flexible strategies across varied contexts. Hunting, scavenging, cannibalism, selective predation, learned behavior, all integrated into a successful survival strategy. The popular image of T-Rex as pure hunter or pure scavenger was always wrong. Nature doesn't work in absolutes. Real predators exploit every available resource. T-Rex exemplified this principle. Opportunistic, adaptable, ruthlessly efficient. Modern apex predators provide useful comparisons. Lions hunt but scavenge. Bears are omnivorous opportunists. Komodo dragons eat anything available. T-Rex operated similarly. Whatever provided calories was consumed. The bite force remains unmatched. 57,000 newtons. No living terrestrial animal approaches this. Crocodiles generate perhaps 1/3 that force. Hippos, maybe half. Nothing today can pulverize bone like T-Rex could. That capability died 66 million years ago. The asteroid impact ended it. Mass extinction claimed all non-avian dinosaurs, T-Rex included. But the ecological role persists. Apex predators still exist. Lions, tigers, bears, crocodiles, Komodo dragons. They hunt, they scavenge, they're opportunistic. They dominate their ecosystems. T-Rex pioneered strategies modern predators still employ: pursuit hunting, selective predation, carcass monopolization, intraspecific aggression. The playbook remains unchanged, just different players. When you examine modern predator behavior, you're seeing patterns that worked for tyrannosaurs. Evolution favors effective strategies, maintains them across lineages, refines them over time. T-Rex succeeded for 2 million years. That's longer than modern humans have existed, longer than many mammal species persist. It was sustainable, effective, ecologically balanced. Then catastrophe struck. Not poor adaptation, not evolutionary failure, just bad timing. Wrong place, wrong moment. Extinction by asteroid. The fossils remain, scattered across Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Canada. Each specimen a fragment of lost ecology. Together they reveal a predator of extraordinary capability. Unmatched bite force, sophisticated hunting strategies, complex feeding behaviors, ecological dominance. For millions of years, nothing challenged T-Rex supremacy. Nothing matched its power. The Hell Creek Formation preserves this world. Frozen in stone. Accessible to patient excavation. Every new discovery adds detail, refines interpretation, brings us closer to understanding. What did T-Rex really eat? Everything it could catch, kill, or scavenge. From bone marrow to organ meat. From fresh kills to rotting carrion. From juvenile prey to multi-ton herbivores. Its own species when opportunity arose. The diet was as varied as the ecosystem allowed. The strategies as sophisticated as any modern predator. More specialized in some ways. That bone-crushing adaptation. That evolutionary investment in osteophagy. Unique among large predators. It gave T-Rex an edge. Access to resources others couldn't reach. Competitive advantage. Ecological dominance. For 2 million years this strategy worked. Then the world changed. The advantage became irrelevant. Size became liability. Large animals died. Small animals survived. The meek inherited the Cenozoic, but the legacy endures. in fossils, in birds, in our fascination with prehistoric predators. T-Rex captures imagination like few extinct animals, perhaps because it represents pure predatory power, perhaps because it dominated so completely, perhaps because we recognize something in it, the apex predator, the ultimate hunter. Whatever the reason, T-Rex remains iconic, 75 million years dead, still commanding attention, still generating research, still revealing secrets. The science continues. New techniques emerge, better imaging, molecular analysis, computational modeling. Each advance brings new insights. What seemed impossible to know becomes knowable. We can estimate bite force, model locomotion, analyze growth rates, determine diet composition, reconstruct behavior, not perfectly, not completely, but with increasing accuracy. The fossils speak. We're learning to listen. Every bone preserves information. Every tooth tells stories. Every coprolite contains data. Together they reconstruct lost worlds. T-Rex lived in those worlds, hunted in those ecosystems, left traces in stone. 75 million years later, we're reading those traces, decoding the evidence, answering questions. What did it eat? How did it hunt? When did it scavenge? Why did it succeed? The answers emerge from patient research, careful analysis, evidence-based interpretation. This is what science provides, not speculation, not imagination, understanding built on fossils, tested against data, refined through discovery. T-Rex was real. It lived, it hunted, it ate, it died. The fossils prove it, the evidence reveals it, the research explains it. 66 million years ago, the most powerful terrestrial predator ever to walk the Earth vanished. The asteroid impact ended its reign, ended its lineage, ended an era. But in rock and bone, the story survives, waiting for discovery, waiting for interpretation, waiting to teach us what really happened when tyrant lizards ruled the world.